This is the I Read Comic Books podcast. I am your host, Mike Rappin. This week I am joined by two stale candy hearts, Paul Jasley.
Hello, humanoids.
And Nick White.
Hey.
Thank you both for joining me this week on I Read Comic Books. This is episode 273. I'm never going to be consistent about the episode number, so I hope you're tracking at home. Before we get into the show...
That feels very comics in a way. Just inconsistent, hard to follow numbering. I think it's very true to...
Eventually, we're going to have legacy numbering for the show, all that kind of stuff. Before we get into things, though, I do want to say that there is a IRCB hangout on our Discord on February 20th at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So if you can make it and you're not a part of our Discord already, make sure to head over there to ircbpodcast.com/Discord to immediately get added to the Discord. And then you can come and hang out with us on February 20th at 8 p.m. But anyways, let's get into things. Let's get into the legally mandated question that I must ask every single episode. How have you been? How have comic books been? Let's start with you, Nick.
Well, here's your requisite Michigan weather report. Snow, very cold. It feels like the Michigan winters of my youth, which I feel like when you say something, you've got to be like 56, and then there's like a flashback like sequence in like a movie into like a sepia tone sort of thing. Anyway, it's really bad. But jokes on Mother Nature. I haven't gone outside. I'm not going outside. It doesn't matter. I'm not going anywhere. You can snow as much as you want. I don't care. The worst thing you have to do is get out the, what do they call that? A roof rake and just make sure the snow doesn't collapse.
Whatever that is. Sure.
And I'm sure some people are going to say, oh, it's roof. Look, I don't care. We're not having the roof discussion. It's not happening.
If people want to have that discussion, they can show up to the hangout. They can debate us about how you
can get mad about that there, okay? What else? DM'd my first game this weekend, Alien RPG. We'll see if anyone returns for round 2. It was pretty good. Danny is in possession of a flamethrower in that game, so things are definitely going to heat up. Yep. So
I will not respond to that pun. Please continue.
So in terms of what I've been reading, I did read Savage #1 from Valiant. I will say so this is a book written by Max Bemis, art by Nathan Stockman, who I think is perhaps best known at this point for Spidey. Literally called Spidey.
Okay.
Triona Farrell on colors and Hassan Otsmane Lehu on letters. We got this as like a promotional advance copy, so I was able to sort of review this in advance because this book obviously will come out later this week, and I do have to say it's not great.
Okay.
I think the last 7 pages of this book will get me to hesitantly read the second issue. It's got some nice action sequences at the end, but how many times can you roll that out? And the colors are surprisingly sort of bright and fun for a book that's about dinosaurs. The only thing this book really kind of carries over from the original 2016 miniseries is that at the end of our main character being warped into an alternate universe and then finally finding his way home in a way, and he kind of falls into modern day London. That's about really the only thing that carries over. The rest of this book is sort of weirdly tongue-in-cheek. Person out of time struggles to deal with social media. Haha, they don't understand likes and TikToks. That's so funny. Hashtag relevant. And maybe I'm just old and bitter at this point, I guess. But it's just so tonally different than the original series by B. Clay Moore, Louis LaRosa, and Clayton Henry. And it almost feels like this book should have either never been revisited or it should have been revisited by the original team. Based on when this book came out, I have to believe that they were probably discussing returning to this book probably right around the same time as the DMG majority share acquisition of Valiant, and I think it got shelved until DMG decided what they were going to do with it, which was go in a completely different direction. Also, they kind of make the main character sort of a super powered dinosaur hunter. This feels like a 90s Turok book. Okay, that is the best way I can put this. If you wanted a 1990s Turok comic, you've got it, which is fitting because basically Savage was created to skirt the fact that Valiant no longer had the copyright on Turok anymore, because that's now in the hands of Dynamite. Yeah,
could be.
It is Dynamite. Yeah. So I will hesitantly read issue 2. The character designs are okay. We'll see what happens. All right. Just not really disappointed. I'm not even trying to hide it here. I really love the original miniseries, and this is really disappointing. I want to briefly go over that Texas Blood Volume 1, written by Chris Condon, art by Jacob Phillips. Most of you know Jacob Phillips has been doing color work for his dad, Sean Phillips, on a large amount of his books within the last 2 to 3 years. This is him kind of striking out on his own to do his own pencils and colors on a book that feels very No Country for Old Men, but tonally also... has anyone else read this? Paul, did you say you read this?
Yes,
okay.
I did.
So I'd be curious to hear your feedback on this. And you've read Kill or Be Killed, right?
Yep.
Okay. This book totally has that weird sweet spot that Kill or Be Killed has of, it seems grounded. There's like some very, very like harsh, violent, grounded in reality stuff going on. But then there's some stuff that you see glimmers of here and there, just weird, unexplained stuff that continues to be unexplained.
Mm-hmm.
And I specifically, I think it's issue 1 where you have the scene around the campfire and you see something off in the woods, right?
Right. Yeah.
And that never gets explained, and it never gets discussed. And you're just left. It's sort of like, it's like that moment where you worry that they're going to put that frame, like you're watching a TV program and there's that like subliminal programming, like, frame that they stick into the reel, and you're like, wait, what did I just see? Right. I really, really like this book. If you want sort of a crime noir, Southern mystery sort of thing, I can't recommend this book enough. I think Jacob Phillips, there's a couple things that are drawn a little weird here, but largely I really, really like the art. And I realize, one, no artist likes to be compared to other artists, and I'm sure even more so, nobody wants to be compared to their dad. So I apologize, Jacob Phillips. But Jacob Phillips' art seems more in line for me with someone like Tula Lote, or I would almost say like Joel Jones, someone like that, more than or even Michael Allred, more than his dad, which is interesting.
Maybe that's intentional.
Yeah, I mean, it's, again, like, I know artists don't like to be compared to other artists, but it's just an easy shorthand to sort of at least give people some sort of an idea. The pacing was weird, and it did seem to get kind of surreal at the end, and I don't know if that was bad pacing or if the book was supposed to be symbolizing you as the reader getting confused about what's real and what's not and who's in control. I would definitely recommend this book. I think Image has another big hit on their hands here, I think.
For sure.
That's exciting.
Yeah. It's interesting because
I mostly just want to read this book. I haven't grabbed it yet.
It's just interesting to have this book, and it kind of reminds me, not thematically of Southern Bastards, but it's the same approach where it's like the creators love where they came from, but also hate it at the same time. So it's like, they're like clearly love Texas, but they recognize some of the problems with it, and they kind of keep casting it as a place you can never fully understand or maybe feel comfortable in. And that's kind of why the book has that sort of uneasiness to it. You can't quite put your finger on what makes it uncomfortable or unusual, but it has a very distinct tone to the book, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's like a simultaneous romanticizing and being terrified of a place at the exact same time.
Yeah.
Right. Interesting. I mean, Jacob Phillips is definitely from the UK, so I'm guessing that Chris Condon is from Texas.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, Paul, what about you? How have you been? How have comic books been?
I've been good. Like Nick said, the West Michigan weather has been it's been seasonal. Unfortunately, this is the worst season in Michigan, so it's been bitterly cold. I've been trying to keep my walks with my dog as short as possible, but yeah, it's not so bad. I'm used to it. I have been spending a lot of time inside reading comics, though, and it's probably no surprise that I mainly read comic books, but the other thing I spend time reading a lot of is biographies about musicians or musical groups. Those are my two kind of things I read, and I managed to find a book that did both for me this past week.
I thought you were going to say chick tracks.
Oh, believe me, Nick, there's no greater joy than finding a random chick track on the ground. That is like my favorite thing. That's a whole other discussion, though, for another show.
Yeah.
I found on Hoopla the book Redbone, The True Story of a Native American Rock Band. This was originally published in France and then was republished by IDW this past year. It's written by Christian Stabler and Sonia Paoloni with art by Thibault Balahi. I'm butchering those French names. I'm very sorry. But this was a surprisingly fun book. This is about the band Redbone, and if you don't recognize the name, I guarantee you recognize their 1974 smash hit, Come and Get Your Love, which everyone knows from Guardians of the Galaxy. It's become another hit yet again, decades later. But if you only know that song, there's a whole history to this band that is really, really fascinating. And the book traces the beginnings of the group back to the late 60s when two brothers, Pat and Lolly Vegas, were starting out playing clubs in Los Angeles. And a young musician named Jimi Hendrix said that they should put together a band that's all Native American musicians. And they ended up doing that years later, and that was the band Redbone. And this book kind of tells the history of the band, and it draws a very strong parallel between the band's approach to music and their culture and the Native American rights movement that was happening in the late 60s, early 70s at the same time. So it's a very political book. They draw a connection between those movements and the protests we had at Black Rock a few years ago about the pipeline. So it connects Native American history, as tragic and sad as it is, to a sort of triumphant story about a band getting successful, having a huge hit, and having a legacy that continues to this day. The framing device is a conversation that Pat Vegas is having with his kids. And at times it kind of feels almost like a Wikipedia entry where the kids are basically asking, oh, that's when so-and-so joined the band, or that's when we recorded this album. It's kind of like just checking off the facts. But when the book goes into a more political direction and explains the history of the band, it's really, really interesting. And I think what's really striking is the artwork. It doesn't really use traditional comic book panel layout. It uses more full page composition, which makes some of the conversation aspects or scenes a little confusing at times. But when it does the flashbacks, it uses like a pale blue and a pale red color exclusively, and this really gorgeous sort of fluid ink line, black inks throughout the book. And again, it kind of gives each chapter of the book at different stages of the band's career a unique feel. It's a very visually striking book. And in terms of the content, it was right up my alley. Obviously, it's a musical history biography and a comic. I was really surprised by it. It's on Hoopla. It's well worth the read, especially if you don't know much about Redbone as a band. So highly recommend that one.
Yeah, I'm just skimming through some of the preview pages here, and it's a beautiful looking book. I love some of these, like just some of the opening pages I can see on like Amazon. Yeah, just this art style is so simple with like 2 tones or 3 tones, but it looks gorgeous. Like I might definitely have to check this. I'm grabbing this book. That's what's happening right now. Thank you for the recommendation, man. This looks awesome.
There you go. See, I made a sale right on the show. That's awesome.
Right. I'm a hard sell though, so you should be really proud.
Yeah,
that's interesting. You brought that up, Paul. I just rented that from Hoopla a couple days ago, so I'm glad to hear that you enjoyed it. So because I haven't started it yet, so that's good to hear.
Yeah, it's very, very enjoyable, very quick read, and it makes me want to get down to the record store and find as many Redbone albums as I can find to kind of right, provide the soundtrack. Right. So it's really good stuff. So, and then very briefly, the other book I read is a number one, Crimson Flower #1. This is a mini series from Dark Horse, written by Matt Kint, art by Matt Lesniewski, sorry, and colors by Bill Crabtree. I remember pulling this and ordering this from previews based solely kind of on the cover artwork. Lesniewski's artwork is very distinct. It's cartoonish and exaggerated, and Crabtree's colors are very sort of like almost garish at times, but it really fits the tone of this book because this book is about a woman in Russia who's trying to track down the man who killed her father. And it turns out he was part of a Russian government training program that trained assassins using Russian folklore. So it's kind of like weaponizing folklore, and she's using her knowledge of Russian folklore to kind of track these people down and uncover this secret history of assassins. There's moments in the book where the line between reality and the folklore and the myths sort of blurs, and that's kind of the most interesting parts to me. And the book ends with an implication that this woman maybe is a character from folklore herself. You know what I mean? There's also an implication that there might be some sort of dissociative personality disorder or some sort of schizophrenia involved as well. But it's more interesting if it's, drawn to the Russian folklore. And I think, again, the artwork has an uneasy quality. There's a couple panels where random people will look like characters from folklore, or like a character's face turns into a wolf's face for one panel. Like she's having these flashes of the stories in what she's doing in quote unquote reality. I really enjoyed it. It's a 4-issue miniseries. I'm probably gonna have to track down the other thing. I have this bad habit of ordering a #1 in previews, forgetting I ordered #1, and then having to go back and track down the other issues when they come out because I forgot to order them. But that's another discussion for another time. So yeah, Crimson Flower by Matt Kint and Matt Lesniewski. Very enjoyable.
Yeah, I was very tempted to grab this book when it came out. The artwork just kind of like rubbed me the wrong way. Like sometimes you see like, honestly, it reminds me a lot of like R. Crumb's work, where like I'm just like, like the detail is so gross. I don't know if I want to look at this. But I mean, if it's good, I mean, I don't know.
It's unnerving. It's unsettling, which I appreciate.
Sure.
I will also say that for a first issue, it seemed pretty like thin. So since it's a 4-issue mini, it's one that I'm like, maybe should I just wait for the trade, or I'm trying to figure out why it was serialized rather than just being an OGN in the first place. So
yeah, I mean, that's kind of the question of a lot of these Matt Kint short series that he's been doing recently.
Yeah.
I probably will just trade weight this one because it sounds like it's probably going to read better in the trade anyways.
Probably.
When I saw some of the art for that, it reminded me a lot of Sam Keith's like The Max, which is
yeah.
I could see some of that, and I could see people kind of being like, I don't know, maybe not for me.
Sure.
Which is fine.
Yeah, well, like I said, I'll probably trade weight this and we'll see what happens. But for me this week, I read some other stuff. I've been reading Hikaru no Go for the book club, the manga discussion group that we have on Discord. But so that's been like my big thing. I read some issues of X-Men and all that stuff. But the thing that I really want to talk about is Harley Quinn, Black, White, and Red, number 7 through 14. I don't know what it is, but every few weeks there's just like a plethora of new issues of this series. And I sit down and I go, okay, well, let's binge through the last, 6 or 7 of them. And, I want to shout out to Danny who turned me on to this series way back when I was just like looking for Big 2 stuff that was good. And this is when Paul turned me on to Far Sector and Immortal Hulk, and then Danny was like, hey, check out this Harley Quinn Black, White, and Red. And I don't know what it is about this series, but it is amazing. Like, if you haven't read it, it's a series of one-shot issues that are just about Harley Quinn getting into trouble, I guess, whether that is her like playing baseball, or her trying to kill the Joker, or her infiltrating the Legion of Doom, or all the stuff that to me made the Harley Quinn cartoon TV series that DC did really, really enjoyable. And like, I'm not a Harley Quinn person. I'm not someone who's just like getting like Harley Quinn tattooed on my arm and says Mr. J, across or something like that. I don't really have a connection to Harley Quinn, but something about this book just really draws me to it. I think it's the anthology style. I think it's the varying little, like, really well told one shots. Like, I think out of this whole series, there's only been like maybe 2 duds out of 14 issues that I've read so far. And it's really, really interesting to see all the different takes on Harley Quinn. They all seem to have this editorial kind of push that like Harley's independent. She's no longer, Harley Quinn from the Batman TV series, even when they're using those styles. She's very independent. She's chaotic. She sometimes has her pet hyenas. Sometimes she's living with Ivy. Sometimes she's off on her own. Sometimes she's gathering, a random league of people that she wants to turn into a street gang a la the Warriors. I mean, this series is all over the place, and it's the kind of like fun that I think Deadpool or fans of Deadpool think Deadpool is. But somehow this book actually nails that humor and makes me feel like I'm having a lot of fun reading it every single time. And it's like, again, they're not all winners. I mean, I would say for the most part, these things kind of strike just around a 3, like a middle of the road, like good comic. But there was a couple of issues in this run that I read from 7 to 14 that I really, really liked. Issue number 7 by Erica Henderson. It's Ivy and Harley kind of being angry friends. And of course, Harley screws everything up for Ivy and all hell breaks loose. The thing I really liked about this is Erica Henderson's art is really phenomenal when it comes to just 2-tone art or 3-tone art with the black, white, and red, because that's the other thing about this series is it's typically in black and white and red. And she does something with her inks in this issue that just really, I like kept staring at just like people's mouths being open, or like the way that someone's face was shaped. Like Erica Henderson has this ability to kind of convey emotion and mouths in a way that no other artist does. And I know that's like a weird way to talk about things, but if you look at her art and the way she draws teeth and lips and just mouth expressions compared to a lot of other artists, you can tell that she really pays a lot of attention to that, and she wants to convey how someone is speaking in the way that they use their face completely, not just their eyes. And yeah, I was really blown away by the way that she drew some of those pages in that issue, because there's some full page spreads of just like Harley and Ivy just like yelling at each other. And it's so beautiful. Plus with the red and stuff like that, you get Ivy's hair. It's really great. Issue number 13, written by Patrick Shoemaker and Eleonora Carlini. I believe this is the issue where Harley Quinn creates this gang that's like the Warriors, and then they fight through a subway train of all the various Warrior like gang knockoffs. And if you've never seen the Warriors, this issue doesn't work. But for someone who loves the stupidity of the movie The Warriors, this issue was fantastic. And then issue 14, this is by Jordi Belair and Greg Smallwood. Hold on, maybe I got 13 and 14 mixed up. I had descriptions down, and now I don't know what they are. But regardless, 14 was fantastic, if only because you got to see Greg Smallwood doing what Greg Smallwood does best, which is shadows, and like really heavy, thick pencil, like charcoal lines, but with Harley Quinn running through Gotham. And it's just a beautiful issue overall. Greg Smallwood, and again, another person that knows how to capture a person's face really, really well. Yeah. And to see him draw Harley Quinn was really, really fun. And I think Jordi Belair is a stellar writer, and she should be on every Bat book forever, because I think she really nails the idea of at least Harley Quinn. I think if she worked really, really well. So highly recommend this series if you are like looking for something off the wall that's not tied to anything. That's a hell of a lot of fun. I will say like between issues 1 and 14, there's probably like 2 or 3 actual duds where I was just like, oh my God, let this issue be over, even though it's 22 pages long. But then there's some of them, like I said, the Erica Henderson issue, this Jordi Belair one that I talked about, like just incredible from start to finish. So yeah, definitely. It's like, this is totally not my bag, but I love this series to death.
All right. You sold me, Mike, because I've seen this pop up a few times too. And yeah, I have no real connection to Harley Quinn as a character, but the creators you're naming, and if you drop a Warriors reference, you're speaking my language. So good sell.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's so funny because like these issues are all digital first. They're like 99 cents each. If you've got a CU subscription, it's like 84 cents an issue. It's such a steal for really, really good content on the whole. So I don't know. I think okay. And so Cinco in the chat is saying if the only Harley Quinn content he liked was Birds of Prey. I think that you would like this series, because I feel like they took that mentality of who Harley Quinn is in the Birds of Prey movie and in the Harley Quinn animated show, where she's very anti-Joker, very trying to establish herself, kind of a goofball, and turn it into a comic book, and it super duper works. So if you like that type of Harley Quinn, or that portrayal of Harley Quinn, I think you'll dig this.
Cool.
I never in my life would I, in 6 years of recording the show, would I think I'd be defending like a Harley Quinn book, but here I am. Like, times are changing, I guess.
Yeah. Wow.
Anyways, let's move on. Let's talk about comic books that are coming out on February 17, 2021. The day we're recording this is Valentine's Day, so if you celebrate a happy Valentine's Day. If you don't, I hope your Sunday's doing well. I guess let's start with you, Paul. What are you excited for this upcoming week?
I'm excited for a reprint. I'm excited for an old comic, to put it a different way, I guess. I'm excited for Scene of the Crime. Ooh. This is a 1999 miniseries written by Ed Brubaker with art by Michael Lark and inks by Sean Phillips. All people I like. So this is something that they did years ago for Vertigo. It's been out of print for a long time. Image recently did a reprint a few years ago in hardcover, and this is the first time the book is showing up in a trade paperback coming out this week. Nice. It's been sort of redesigned, the cover and stuff, by Sean Phillips. And, I really like Ed Brubaker, obviously. Him and Michael Lark worked together on Gotham Central, which is one of my favorite Batman-related comics ever. And this seems to be cut from the same cloth. It's a modern-day noir story set in San Francisco. You've got Brubaker, you've got Phillips, you've got Lark doing crime. I'm going to buy that. So I've never read this before, so I'm glad to see it being reprinted in an accessible format, and it'd probably be the first thing I read when I pick it up this week.
Nice. This is that book that I think I've seen advertised in the back of every Brubaker and Phillips book for the past 5 or 6 years. And I'm just like, I really should check that out. And then I never look into it. So now I have no excuse. They reprinted it and everything.
Exactly.
I'm kind of in the same boat. I've thought about reading this a couple times, but as Paul pointed out, it's been out of print and then they switched it to hardcover, and I don't know what sort of arrangement or agreement was made for this book, but every time I see it, either in digital or in print, it's really expensive.
Yeah.
Every time. So that's great. I'm glad to hear that.
Very cool. Nick, what about you? What are you excited for this week?
So for me, it's gonna have to be Young Hellboy #1, The Hidden Land.
Oh man,
yeah, it's a mini series, and I think younger, more cynical me would have been like, oh, Young Hellboy, what a cash grab, how stupid, why is this happening? I think younger me would have gotten the same feeling he got when I loved Indiana Jones as a kid, and then I was like, oh, there are Indiana Jones books, and it's oh, this is young Indiana Jones, and I'm like, oh, this is garbage. I don't like this at all. Why is this happening? So, and the answer is money. And so I think in the past I would have been this would have elicited a little bit of an eye roll for me, but I'm totally on board, and with there being so little Hellboy content at this point, I'll take what I can get. And you got Mike Mignola co-writing, or at least co-plotting, and you've got Dave Stewart on colors, so you at least know that the ship is being steered by a competent hand. The title is co-written by industry veteran Thomas Sniegoski, who seems to have quite a track record for writing sort of horror books / comics. And it's drawn by Craig Rousseau, who has spent a large amount of time working for DC. Probably two of the only things I noticed for Rousseau were Rousseau drew 2 issues of Future Quest, which is a great series. So no issues there. Beyond that, yeah, it's just a younger version of Hellboy going with Professor Brutenholm to a dig site in South America, and they end up getting stranded. I spent 15 minutes trying to find actual preview pages of art for this book that weren't just all of the variant covers, which is never a good sign, right? But I did at least find a variant cover by the artist who drew the interior pages, and it's super stylized, but it seems fine. So I'm, like I said, nobody's getting any new Hellboy content right now for the most part, so we'll take what we can get until Disney buys it, and then Disney just makes their own Hellboy comic. So this isn't me being mad about aliens, everyone. It's not. Maybe you're thinking it. I assure you, it's not. It's not. So yeah.
Sure, Nick. Sure.
I'm not mad. Okay.
Yeah. I did manage to find a preview page I dropped in the Discord. But anyways, before I get into my pick for this week, it's 2021. We're trying to make people read comic books and give them money to do so. So remember, if you share the show on social media, on Twitter or Instagram, and make sure to tag us, we could potentially give you $20 to Comixology, Midtown Comics, your local comic book shop, wherever you prefer. Just make sure to share the show online, and we can make that happen for you. Before I get into my pick, though, I also want to say that we have some Discord picks from the folks that are listening live. Crashmore said that they're into Recount number 2. Cinco's looking forward to Guardians of the Galaxy number 11, and Danny is looking forward to The Immortal Hulk Flatline by Declan Shalvey, which, according to some of the discussion in the Discord chat, this book has been delayed like crazy. I feel like I recall that happening, and TLDR, thanks COVID. Anyways, for me, though, my pick this week is Haha number 2, because I'm a basic person and I refuse to pick an X-Men book until they start to really please me again. This is by W. Maxwell Prince. Zoe Thorogood is on art for this issue. And apparently, number 1 was some kind of parody of the Joker movie, but since I didn't see that, I didn't know. Okay, like, people have been really mean to me online about it. I'm not going to name names here, but like, you can't blame me for not having seen the movie that everyone told me was bad and that I shouldn't see. So like, why am I getting yelled at for not knowing that it was a parody of a movie that I didn't? Okay, whatever. Look, now I'm going to go watch this movie just to spite all of you. Everyone said, Mike, don't watch this movie. Now I'm going to go fucking watch this movie, and it's all your fault. That's all I'm saying. Either way, I'm excited about this issue. I don't, this is like an anthology book about sad clowns. The summary for this one is Rudolph on the road to Funville. Every boy and girl needs to see a mama like a puppy needs a bowl. What the fuck does that mean? I don't know. All I know is that it's rated M for mature according to Image Comics, and I'm ready to read it. So mess me up. W. Maxwell Prince, I can't wait. I will say, if you read number 1, it kind of reminds me of the Joker book that Jeff Lemire did with Andrea Sorrentino. But of course it's the Joker movie. I'm just saying that it also reminded me of another comic book. So middle fingers to everyone who said it was the Joker. I didn't know. Okay. Anyways, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about a bunch of new number 1s, because I gave everyone a weird assignment and we're going to see how it played out. So we'll be back in just a second. For our show this week, we are talking about a bunch of number 1s, number 1 comic books. So, I threw this topic to Paul and Nick saying, hey, I want you guys to pick up a new number 1, something that you probably wouldn't read, something that you probably wouldn't expect people to have you pick up, and then give us a review. Because, sometimes it's worthwhile to just blindly find a book and just give it a chance, because that's how you discover, your next favorite comic book. Or at least that's the way that I take it. I think there was maybe a year or two ago on the show where I was trying to pick up like a new Comixology submit book like every other week or every week, and I kind of fell off that train just because it was tiring to just dig through all of the stacks of new comic books that came out. But I thought we'd take that idea and kind of just run with it. Not necessarily Comixology submit, but just stuff in general that came out, new number 1s. So we all went around and found new number 1s. And of course, despite there being hundreds and hundreds of different books that came out, somehow Nick and Paul managed to pick up the same book. But nonetheless, let's talk about those books. I guess, Paul and Nick, what was the book that you two picked up?
This is so funny because, Mike, you said to pick something maybe out of your wheelhouse, would normally pick up. So that I think that works for my pick. Mm-hmm. I'm surprised that Nick ended up going with this as well because of that. But anyway, I picked up Fear.
Nick's just breaking all the rules on this goddamn show.
He's a rebel.
Unintentionally, but we'll get into that. Go ahead.
Okay.
We both read Fear Case number 1. This is from Dark Horse. It's another Matt Kindt book with art by Tyler Jenkins, colors by Hilary Jenkins. And you're saying, what, another Matt Kindt book? I guess to set up the conversation here, Matt Kindt is one of those creators, much like Jeff Lemire, I know, who writes a lot of stuff, but I've only really delved into their creator-owned stuff that they've written and drawn, right? So Lemire, my favorite stuff is the Essex County trilogy. I've tried reading other stuff he's written, and it's fine. It's just I like his artwork maybe more than I like his writing. Same thing with Matt Kindt. I really like Super Spy and the stuff of Mind Management that I've read. And a lot of that has to do with his artwork more than maybe the stories themselves. So I decided to take a chance and read something he's written. I like Tyler Jenkins' artwork, and the hook for the book that they put in previews that I saw was, it's like True Detective meets The Ring. So I said, yeah, I'll give that a shot. I like True Detective, a horror story. That might be interesting. And my quick takeaway, my 2 cents right away, that's kind of all it is. It doesn't really bring anything else to the table other than being True Detective meets The Ring. But we can get deeper into that. Nick, why did you pick this book?
So I picked this book because Mike said, find a new number 1 that came out within the last month that you would take a chance on. And I couldn't find a healthy compromise of something that was outside of my comfort zone without being too outside of my comfort zone. And so
Nick, I think you should give the real reason, because I think the conversation that you and I had was, a lot of these books look wild and crazy, but I can't verify if any of them are comics gators because of how wild their topics are.
I mean,
is understandable. We're not going to talk about those books. I just think, I agree. Some of those books are really bizarre, and then you kind of have to wonder, this is so insane. Is this person a straight up bigot? We had to, yeah, I get it.
And so I kind of settled on this book in some ways. It was a little bit just a faint reach for me. Obviously, I love Matt Kindt, but Jenkins' artwork recently seems to be getting really, really loose. And I mean, I remember maybe I think this was Peter Panzerfaust was Jenkins, right?
Yeah.
So that felt a lot more tight as far as the pencils were. They weren't quite as loose. And I feel like Grass Kings was really loose, but I didn't mind it. And that was sort of watercolory. And this book was definitely something of a reach, because this book feels almost like the coloring is... It's not really watercolor. It's definitely darker shades, and it almost feels like pastels.
Yeah.
Not like the pastel color palette, but like pastels as an art medium.
What's really strange, actually, about the artwork, what's really strange is that when I picked it up and flipped through it, I actually thought it was Matt Kindt artwork as well. It seems very similar to his color palette and his sort of coloring style. That at first blush, I was like, wait, did he draw this too? But so, yeah, I can see maybe the connection there.
Yeah, Kindt sort of has the whole Mike Mignola thing going on, where you tend to work with other people who who have sort of a aesthetic that's like adjacent to yours, you know? Right. So,
yeah, I can see that.
And some of the pages in this book, the artwork feels like really muddy in really low there were a couple of pages where I thought the page wasn't fully rendered yet, and then I was like, oh no, wait, it's just supposed to be kind of that blurry. But I think the biggest thing that I can probably say about this that I found really interesting, that I'm not so sure you picked up on, Paul, because I don't know if you read Bang, with Kindt and Wilfredo Torres. We can discuss this. I think it'll either people will know about this from having read Bang, or they'll find this interesting, but it's not spoilery, I think. When they pull the book out of the glove box in the car,
right? Yep.
The old pulp sci-fi novel. That is actually a book from Bang, and the guy who wrote that book plays a big part in Bang.
Okay, interesting.
So it does make you wonder, is this kind of a fun throwaway to another work by Matt Kindt? Is this sort of like a haha, this is from a Matt Kindt Dark Horse book, and that's from a Matt Kindt Dark Horse book?
Actually, haha is written by W. Maxwell Prince, actually. So,
oh, right. I'm sorry. Thank you for that.
Sorry.
Fact check.
And it's not like Matt Kindt to put in some deeper connections and have sort of a metatextual approach to his books at all, right?
Yeah. How uncharacteristic that would be, yeah.
Right.
Well, so I guess so my criticism of it being a little too on the nose with the True Detective meets the Ring comparison. The stuff I really liked about the book were the interactions between the two Secret Service agents that you kind of follow throughout the book. Like Matt Kint's approach to dialogue, their relationship, that moment in the car that they have together when the guy gives the guy the book. That stuff was all really good and engaging. I felt the overall story kind of fell flat, but those moments I really liked.
Yeah, I mean, I think the core conceit here is very high concept, and I don't mean that in a bad way. Like, I think if you can get people to show up for the high concept idea and you can get them to stay for the good dialogue and relationships, then I don't consider that a problem.
Right.
What it reminds me of, the core conceit, it makes me think of what was that movie called where the guy shows up and he's got like, I mean, I think it, like, short stories have done this too. He shows up and he's got a button and he says, if you push the button, I'll give you $1 million, but somebody dies. Right. And
okay.
Isn't it from Frank Langella shows up with the button, and I think, what was that called? The choice, the button.
This is a movie, right?
Yeah.
I think it was a story and then it became a movie. Yeah.
Something like that.
Like, it reminds me a lot of that, because you've got like this very clearly laid out, you know, moral dilemma of sorts. I guess you could also say this is kind of like, what was that movie? It Follows.
It's very much like It Follows, yeah.
Where you have a certain amount of time to pass this off to somebody else, otherwise you're in trouble, right?
Now I need to go read this book, because you guys are really selling me on what this concept is, and you keep talking around it to the point where I just want to stop recording the show and go read the thing.
We can discuss the core conceit, because I think it's interesting and I don't think it's spoilery. So you have...
It sounds like it's a spoiler. No, it sounds already like a spoiler. I don't want to be spoiled by it. So no, Nick, no. I'm going to say no, because
I'll let Paul decide. Let the adult decide.
In the past, you have said this isn't a spoiler and then gave away the twist in an issue.
Let Paul decide.
I don't think it's a spoiler. Basically, the main premise here is you have, like I said, two Secret Service agents. There's a long-standing case that no one can solve, and it's a case about a case, a black box that first appears in World War II, and it seems to be cursed, and that's kind of where the book picks up, is they end up tracking down what they think might be this mysterious black box, and it's being basically passed from person to person, and the gimmick is you give the box to the person you hate the most, and if you don't do that in 3 days, the person you love the most will suffer some sort of consequence. So that's the mystery right there.
Gotcha. Okay.
And again, it's a good concept. I think my biggest critique is that it all feels like I've seen this kind of stuff before, even from Matt Kint. It kind of feels like almost too much in his wheelhouse, like something he could write in his sleep almost. There wasn't quite enough to that for me to sink my teeth into, at least not to keep buying it issue to issue, you know.
Gotcha. So probably going to trade weight on this. I guess that was kind of the next thing is I wanted to ask the both of you was, do you think you'll continue picking this up in single issues? Do you think you want to even continue reading it? Because, I mean, once we get to my pick, I've got a whole lot of thoughts on that. But I'm curious to know what you guys, like how you're going to continue, if you're going to continue at all.
I was probably going to trade weight it, but I'm actually pretty interested. And I think I might pick this up in singles. I mean, maybe I misunderstood this, Paul, but don't they intimate that the box might actually go back hundreds of years at one point as well? Yeah, and
they're tying it to the larger history of the Secret Service as an organization. Of course, this type of story, of course, going to have the sort of deep state government conspiracy tied in as well. Because why not? Let's throw everything into this. Right?
I mean, yeah. Did you read Mind Management? Yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
I think, as I said, the one thing I would say is I think if you were maybe turned off by, you know what? I think it could go both ways. If you didn't really like Jenkins' art on Grass Kings, I think this is enough of a departure that you might actually be more on board with this. But I also think that if you were maybe on the fence with Grass Kings, this might be really out there. That said, as Paul said, it is pretty similar to Matt Kint's own art, and so if you like that sort of aesthetic or something similar to that, I think you'll be okay with this. I think the color palette is fine, but it's like it's very dark. It can be sometimes pretty hard to distinguish what's going on, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
But
don't read this on a tablet during the day. Gotcha.
Yeah, yeah. Just go out into the sun and just get some nice glare and yeah. I think there's promise here. We just need to see how this unfolds, and I'm really curious to see if this shared universe thing is really like building out into something like really wild, because I've read a couple promo pieces in interviews and stuff for Bang, and I've read stuff for Fearcase, and there has not been any overt promotions or mentions of these books being connected. So if it's happening, like, he's just sort of doing it, and he's not trying to sell it based on that, which is interesting.
Gotcha. Well, I guess we'll just get into my book, which I will say before I figured out what I was going to read, I almost picked up Kick Hit versus Ass Girl. I mean, sorry, it's Kick Ass versus Hit Girl. It's written. The cover of this book is written like the Walking Dead sign, like don't dead open inside. Like, it doesn't make any sense when you read it left to right. Anyways, that's funny to me. No, the book that I read was Of Thieves and Elves, Volume 1. This is by A.P. Stevens with pencils and inks by Cesar Oliveira. With colors by Samuel B. Bush and letters by Josh. This was sent over to us for a review, so I just want to give that just a shout out to AP Stevens for sending that over. And I gave it a read this week. The comic book dropped on February 10th, and I'll just say, like, the story was pretty straightforward. Kind of reminds me of The Witcher, but with more more bluntness. The synopsis is Trin, the master of the Eornor clan, is transporting an ancient relic across the lands to return it to the vault of Eornor. In his journey, he comes across some proof of the rumored nameless darkness growing in the land. What will Trin do to complete his task? The thing I will say about this book is for 46 pages, you get like quite a bit of bang for your buck in terms of story. The first third of this book feels really clunky. There's a lot of lore dumping. I guess getting the main character Trin into this situation where he has to fight a bunch of dudes is kind of rough and kind of falls back on some tropes in fantasy that I think like will never escape, but they're kind of tried and old. And there are two female characters in the book that are just there to be captors, that are just freed. And I think that this whole book could have just avoided those characters and avoided this implication of like violence against women in order to get Trin into a situation by just having him run into this band of bandits that had abducted the women in the first place. That being said, like the overall story is pretty okay. It's pretty interesting. The hook, the cliffhanger at the end of this book was really surprising. I know this is like volume 1. I think it's kind of like issue 1. It's like 46 pages, so a little bit bigger than your standard like comic book. But there was a lot of really good action in this book. Like the combat in this book, I don't think I've seen such like dynamic use of various fighting styles, I guess, and not like this is something I truly pay attention to, but in a superhero book, you kind of just see people punch and kick and scream, and they're talking the entire time. Whereas this book, I intentionally spent a lot of time with Trin fighting various dudes in this group of bandits, and each of the fights felt very unique, felt very dynamic. You could get across this idea that Trin wasn't a perfect character, even though he won most of his fights. And I really like just the design of a lot of the characters. I think the main villain, whose name I didn't write down, has a really unique style that was really eye-catching, and I'd obviously want to see more of that character in subsequent volumes, and I think we will, given how this issue ended. And yeah, I was a little worried going into this book because it felt like a lot of lore dumping about who Trin was and how this old group of elves. He's just Trin is an elf. He is the like this titular character that people seem to know. They know that he's this old person. He's this recognized person in his clan, and he's traveling with this relic. We don't really know why, but the relic's possessed and is constantly talking to him and trying to get him to use it, which I think offers a lot of interesting things. And these bandits are like, well, we're going to steal your shit. And he's like, if you do, the world will end. And they're like, haha, no, it won't. So that's like, it's a simple summation of like a little bit more complicated story, but that's what I took away, which I thought was like a really, like, there's a lot of really fun fantasy bits in here. There's, like I said, a lot of bad tropes that also fall into it, but I don't know. It seems like there's plans to do a lot of bigger stories within the series. I could see this turning into a bigger book if the right people were reading it, and there was a lot of interest in like the overall lore. Seems like Stevens has a lot of ideas for like this big world. There's a nice map that you got at the beginning of this issue that provided like just this overview of things, and I'm really into that kind of stuff as a fantasy nerd. So I guess like shit, I probably would have picked this up, I guess, if I saw it. But all things considered, I'm actually usually really hesitant to pick up fantasy books by creators that I don't know because of reasons that I pointed out that are worrying to me that I don't necessarily like to see in my fantasy books.
Yeah.
Plus, I will say the coloring in this book was really off to me at first. It felt really splotchy and it felt really unnatural and didn't really fit the vibe of the book. But the more I read it, the more it actually suited things. There's this harshness to the colors and these weird neons, like muted neons that at first don't really work. But I think as the story goes on, they're used for emphasis in a couple of different ways that I thought was really, really smart. So yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I guess I probably would have picked this book up, but at the same time, I wouldn't have picked it up. I don't know. Fantasy books are a really easy sell for me, but I just I don't know. So like, I don't know. So I guess shit. Maybe I didn't even follow my own rules in this goddamn thing. God damn it.
No, I'm looking at there's a preview of this book on Google Books, and yeah, the color palette reminds me. It reminds me of Space Riders. Like it's got those pulpy, hard, like neat, like all of the colors are like these hard neons. That almost feels like an 80s comic book coloring, but like a modern idea of what 80s comic book coloring was like. Yeah. It's got a pulpy vibe to it. Like that's what I get. So
the colors are pulpy, but this is like the most straight up like hard fantasy book I've read in a long time. Like not trying to modernize anybody, not trying to use any modern slang. Like the main character speaketh as if he was frometh the forest. Which like isn't a knock on the book. I definitely respect that, and I do like that in a hard fantasy kind of story where we're really trying to get into the like gritty, no, I don't want to say grittiness, but like just the periodness of the book, even if it is a made up period. So that's not a bad thing by any means, but it is kind of a strange book. I think if I saw this, just from the colors alone, I probably wouldn't have picked it up. And even just the 3 preview pages, if you look at them on like Comixology, they're just like caption boxes. And again, the lore dumping was kind of like a lot to begin with, but once you got past that, the book's not bad.
I mean, that's kind of always been my my hesitation, or the big hurdle for me to get over with a lot of fantasy stuff is it requires so much exposition to set everything up. The world building never quite feels natural to me, and so that's one of the reasons fantasy's never been a genre I've really gravitated towards. And maybe this sounds like may not be a good place to start for someone who doesn't already like that genre.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I think that while as someone who likes fantasy and doesn't have an issue with a lot of that lore dumping, this isn't like a huge leap for me. But yeah, if that's the kind of thing that turns you off, I don't think you'd be into this book, at least to start. Because again, I think the action's good. There's a really good twist at the end. The issue itself before the epilogue, because there's an epilogue, folks, didn't end in a way that I thought it was, and I was genuinely surprised by how it ended. So like to the point where I think I need to read volume 2, if only to get a sense of closure on the story that's in the middle of this book. So it's, to that end, I think it did its job in selling me on the book, but just reading the first few pages, I don't think I would have been drawn in if I wasn't actually trying to like go through and actually read this. So yeah, I don't know. It's kind of tough to say like how, I don't know, to give it like, I don't know. It's just tough to say like if I would have kept up on this book. So I don't know. Did I break my own rules? You decide. Someone write me a letter, ircbpodcast@gmail.com. You let me know what you think.
Mike, we make the rules. We can't break them. We make them. So
this is true.
It, you know, like I was saying earlier in the show, I've run into this problem lately where I'm intrigued enough by a book in the previews to pull the first issue and then promptly forget that I did that. So, part of that is like I like the idea of discovering something new, and I want to jump on a book. I want to find the sleeper hit, right? I want to find something new and fresh, and so I'm willing to try number ones. That's something I've been trying to do more of. It just you run into that problem where it's like if you miss issue 2 or 3, especially if it's a smaller publisher and it's not going to get reprinted or go back into second printing or whatever, you really run into that problem. It's like, well, I miss issue 2, I got to wait for the trade. Or I can try to track down the other issues and jump back on, when the next previews rolls through. So it's like that 2-month gap in previews ordering to the books landing in my shop. But that's kind of been the tough thing to navigate for me lately. So I'm very open to trying new number ones, but that's always in the back of my mind. It's like, I got to make sure it's something I remember and at least I'm interested enough to pull issue 2,
Right. Well, that's like the big dilemma, I think, in new comics by themselves, is that I think that there are a lot of really good comics out there.
Oh, yeah.
And the problem is that you read a lot of them. And so it's hard to, like, you really, if you're going to pick up a new number one, like, and maybe this isn't true for everybody listening to the show or whatever, but I think it's true for the three of us sitting here that, you read so many comic books. Like, if a book doesn't really stick out in your head, like, there's no reason for you to even go pick up that next issue. Like, I tell myself not to just auto subscribe to books on Comixology, just to buy the number one. And if the number one is good enough, I'll go remember at the end of that issue to go pick up the next issue. Mm-hmm. Like, in terms of like going to pre-order it or subscribe to it. And I think that, like, for instance, like Seven Secrets, like, what an idiot I was for not picking up the rest of that series. But I remember reading number one. I think I liked it, but I didn't go and pick up the next issue. I didn't subscribe to it or anything because I don't think it stuck out. Now, again, I'm kicking myself because that book is a slow burn in some ways. But yeah, I think it's just, we read a lot of books, and if something doesn't stick out, like, it just falls off your radar, and it's really easy to do until someone reminds you of it, or you happen to, be browsing through the list of comics and go, oh shit, I remember I read issue number one. I thought that was pretty good. And then you're like 2 or 3 issues behind. And if you're reading physically, like you're talking about, Paul, there's a whole dilemma. So it's kind of tough. I mean, there's just too many damn good comic books out there, I guess. Is that what we're saying here, or is it something else?
Yes, it's a spoil of riches sometimes. That is, as Peter Parker says, the gift and the curse of being a comic books fan, so.
Yeah. So I don't know. I thought this was an interesting experiment. I wanted to see what you guys would pick up. I wanted to kind of just, see, have a little bit of a different discussion on the show where we're kind of just straight up talking about comic books rather than like the things that compose comic books and stuff. So I probably want to try this again in the future. And I mean, this is one of those kind of semi-evergreen things to talk about, if only because, like, there's always going to be new number ones. And I think that it's really, like, important for us to challenge ourselves as comic book readers and try things that are out of our wheelhouse and try things that are, not necessarily something you'd auto pick up. Like, you throw an Image book with, a creator that I've probably heard of once on a fantasy book, I'm going to pick it up, right? Like, that's a really easy sell for me. Whereas, some of this stuff, like Fear Case, I didn't even pick that up because I'm just like, I fucking don't want to read horror books all the time, sure. Which is half the reason why I don't read any of the Vault books, because, like, Vault, it's so scary, and I just don't find anything I don't find a lot of horror interesting.
Vault books' core conceit is, so there's this thing what if it's scary? It's like, right. What if it's not? Like,
so it's interesting, but this is why I like challenge myself to try stuff, because I actually will say I did grab another number one for this episode, and I read it, and I was so disappointed by it. There's 4 typos in the comic that were clear, like, not like, oh, you forgot like an S or something. It was like spelling your incorrectly, forgetting an entire word in a sentence, and I was just like, oh, I can't talk about this book because the book wasn't even that interesting. And I'm just like, do I show up here and go, fuck new comic books, whoever would try to read a number one that they don't trust? Like, that's unfair. So, right. I wanted to talk about this other book because I did think that there was a lot of good for it, even if there were some things that kind of rubbed me the wrong way about it. But again, it's important. I realize that people see this like, oh, I'm going to try something and not like it as like a risk and blah, blah, blah. But like, I don't know. I think you do need to give comic books a chance, and I think you'd be pleasantly surprised how many more books out there are that you like than the ones that you don't like. Because I think for every dud, like the one that I read, there's 5 that I actually would enjoy from a random number one. And the only thing that stops me from buying more of them is the fact that, oh shit, number one came out and there's no way for me to subscribe, or it's digital only and the release schedule isn't planned, and I don't know how to find out when it's coming out next. So you just have to keep it on your radar. But I don't know. That's the problem with comics in general. We need to fix it. It's a whole other topic of discussion. But I really highly recommend that if you have a few extra bucks in your pull list, go to Comixology, find a book that you probably haven't heard of, and if it looks even remotely interesting to you, and even if you don't know the creators, just try it. Because I think you will be pleasantly surprised by how many good independent comic books there are out there. It doesn't have to be from one of the big 10 publishers. There's a lot of stuff that's being published out there that you probably would have never known about had you not just tried with your $2 or $3 on a whim. But
yeah,
anyways, I'll get off my soapbox to see if Paul and Nick have anything to say to that.
No, I think it's sometimes overwhelming, because I primarily buy physical books, so I'm flipping through previews every month, and it's overwhelming sometimes to see how much stuff looks cool, looks interesting, and I want to give it a shot, but it's $4 or $5 a pop to try new number one, so I'm trying to budget better, which is failing completely thanks to Future State. Anyway,
oh no,
but there is this moment where you're kind of flipping through. It's like there are so many comics, and it's like I said, it's an embarrassment of riches. It's a spoil of riches because there's always probably going to be something that clicks with you, and it's just a matter of you taking the time to find it. It's not going to come to you. So yeah, it's the curse of being the comic book reader.
Yeah. And I mean, I know people rely on shows like this, or they rely on different websites and stuff to give them kind of the inside scoop. But I also think that there's no harm in you trying to find something on your own. I mean, I definitely think that we want to be able to say, I'm going to get a good comic book when I pay money for it. But, I don't know. I think there's no harm in trying new things. Nope. Anyways, Nick, I don't know if you were going to chime in with anything. I'm just never going to get off.
I don't know if I can get on board with this trying new things idea, but you can save that for another episode, I guess.
Okay.
I mean, I would add this for people who are maybe looking for a lower barrier to entry to sort of branch out. I think Hoopla is a perfect way to do it. Yeah, I think if you have Comixology Unlimited, I think
that's true.
Borrowing free issues on that. Yeah. If you're looking to lower that barrier to entry by just, saying I want to try new things, but I don't have or don't want to spend money on it, or at least my money on it. Although if you're a taxpayer, technically you're paying for the library. So it is your money. You're still paying your money.
Well, assuming your library offers you Hoopla, because not all libraries do.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. These are some excellent, options. I recently read what was that book I told you about, Mike? Out to Sea, I think is what it was called. That I thought, gosh, was it First Second? It was this really interesting graphic novel, and just because it was something that sometimes when I've got leftover borrows on Hoopla, I'll just go to the featured tab and I'll just start looking at what sort of books they're saying are interesting, and I'll just take one of those on a whim. So that's sort of how I would do it. The title was not Out to Sea, it was Set to Sea.
Okay.
So that's definitely one way of doing it. But otherwise, like, I completely agree with Paul. Like, sometimes you look through previews and you're like, this looks interesting, but also I will forget about this book. It will never be reprinted. I will never be able to find it, and it might not end up on Comixology. And other than me seeing it on this page, it will be lost to time forever.
Exactly.
So there's just got to be a better way of I mean, I guess the fail-proof solution is you just buy everything in previews. You just call up Previews Magazine and you go, I'll take one of everything. And they're like, even that $9,000 Elektra figurine. And you're like, I said one of everything.
Right. Nick is the guy from that Monty Python Meaning of Life skit where the guy orders one of everything and then explodes, and it's disgusting. So with that, I guess thanks you guys for trying something kind of new to yourselves that you probably wouldn't have picked up. Sort of. But yeah, I think this is a fun little thing. I definitely want to try it again in the future. We've got a couple different topics like that I think are just really fun to get us trying new things and getting a little bit out of our wheelhouse. So maybe you'll see this again in a couple of months with two different hosts just to get their perspective on things. So I guess with that, we can wrap up here. I want to say, Thanks to Paul and Nick for being on the episode. You can find them on Twitter. You can find Paul at OhiPaulie. You can follow Nick at Death Star Plans. You can follow me at Mike Rappin, and the show on Twitter and Instagram at IRCB Podcast, where if you mention us on those social media platforms, you too could win $20 in free comic books from us.
This episode first aired on our Patreon, and it's possible because of our wonderful Patreon supporters. You can join up on patreon.com/IRCB podcasts, get exclusive new series like the IRCB Movie Club, Saga of Saga, the Giant Day series, and much, much more.
If you haven't already, please rate and review our show. 5 stars would be great. You can do this on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to podcasts. It really helps us spread the word about IRCB. You can also join the IRCB Discord community to chat about comics and more and listen to our episodes live as we record them. You can do that at ircbpodcast.com/Discord. And it would help us a lot if you would tell your friends or your local comic shop about the show.
Infinity Shred is the best band in the universe. They do all of our music. We can't thank them enough. Go check out their latest single, Was, on Bandcamp. It is fucking incredible. I want to say thank you to Xander, who is a wonderful editor and a great person to play D&D with. I want to say thanks to Paul and Nick again for being on this episode. Thank you to Crashmore, Danny, Cinco, and Jeff in the chat for joining us today, listening live. Thank you to everyone out there who listens to this show and shares it on social media and just tells people about it, because we really, really appreciate it. Until next time, remember that comics are good, and so are you.